morning, my friends. Life is easy when everything goes all right. But what about those times when things don't go okay? When life is difficult? What about those times when nothing seems to work? When things stop clicking or we fall into a hole? You've all heard about the pessimist who not only slips into a rut, but then furnishes it. We have all had those moments when the bottom seems to fall out. We despair of ever being whole or happy again. There are times when we are tempted to give up on life. And there are times when some people call it quits. There are moments when some contemplate the ultimate surrender, suicide. My maternal grandfather committed suicide and deeply affected our family. It's said that suicide is the permanent solution to a temporary problem. But for all of us, there are moments when we are overcome by depression and hopelessness and despair. In fact, however, these are sacred moments, full of possibility. These moments when we don't feel we can go down any further are the times when the only direction left is to go up. There are times when we experience what the medieval scholar and monk said, St. John of the Cross, in 16th century Spain, what he referred to as the, quote, dark night of the soul. That's a graphic description. Who here has had a dark night of the soul? Almost all of us have experienced that. Alcoholics Anonymous teaches us that lack of power was our dilemma. And addiction recovery tells us it is necessary, indeed essential, that we hit bottom before we can begin to climb, to recover. It is difficult to start our upward ascent until we are at the lowest point. It's difficult to climb the ladder unless we start with that lowest first rung. We become willing, as only the dying can be. It's one of the ironies of life that there is a gift in desperation, a victory in surrender, a sunrise that follows the night. Let us not make the mistake of trying to shun all loss and tragedy in life. These things are inevitable. Let us learn instead to find the potential in them. There's something very special and sacred about the low moments, the times of despair. Traditional Christian theology talks about how Christ voluntarily divested himself of divine powers to become human and to live as a man. As our reading this morning said from Philippians 2:8, Jesus emptied himself, taking the form of a servant. This teaching of being emptied out is known, there's a Greek word for it, as kenosis. Kenosis. And it comes from the Greek root word canoe, like the canoe that you paddle, only spelled differently, of course. This emptying out is essential to make room to be filled with something else. Something more. As one theologian put it, for Paul to have the mind of Christ is specifically to be kenotic in accommodating to the needs of others, especially those who are poor or weak in the community. We then realize that genuine love has a kenotic quality. This is very profound. So too, let us not begrudge the moments we feel defeated and depressed. It is only by emptying ourselves that we can identify and empathize with others who are also empty, who likewise suffer. In a sense, we create space for them. We give them permission. We validate and encourage them to be fulfilled. Now, unmerited suffering is a theme we find in ancient times, going back at least as far as the book of Job. Job, as we know, was a wealthy, upright, blameless man who lived. What was the land that he lived in? Who remembers? Yes. Uz, U-Z. And many have reflected on the similarity of the Bible's description of where Job lived, Uz, to L. Frank Baum's title, The Wizard of Oz, O-Z. Now, according to the Old Testament, God allows Satan to torment Job. But he forbids him to take Job's life. He takes Job's livestock, his servants, his children, they all die. And Job himself is afflicted with skin sores. Friends visit him and tell Job that when he comforted other people, he never really understood their pain. He had no basis for empathizing with them. The meaning of Job's hitting bottom and being emptied out is expressed in his affirmation. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil? And the better known phrase, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, and you know the rest of it. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In 16th century Spain, Teresa of Avila wrote a poem. My Spanish will fail me, and Teresa will correct me later. That's what I depend upon. Nada te turbe, nada te espante, todo se pasa. Translated, that means, let nothing disturb you. Nada te turbe. Let nothing make you afraid. Nada te espante. All things pass. todo se pasa. Teresa was a mentor to another Carmelite, a diminutive man, less than 5 feet tall. This cleric became known, we've already referred to him, as John of the Cross, who wrote an epic poem that's been published as a book, La Noche Oscura, the dark night of the soul. In the 1980s, Harold Kushner wrote his popular book that we've heard of and many of us are familiar with, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. And our friend Richard Agler, rabbi of the Upper Keys Jewish Center, recently published his book called The Tragedy Test, provoked by the untimely death of his 20-year-old daughter. And he concludes in his book, and I quote, that the God of law and spirit is one with and does not overturn the laws of the universe. This God may not be all the God we want, but it is the God we have. Now, before I moved to the Florida Keys in 1993, I knew a man in upstate New York named Julius. Julius was an alcoholic who had newly found recovery, but he had trouble accepting the fact that he couldn't drink anymore. Day after day, he would moan, "Why me? Why me? Why me?" And one memorable day, he began to say something different. He began to say, "Why not me?" Signaling a level of acceptance. But Teresa and I enjoy children's stories like The Little Prince and Runaway Bunny. But I think her favorite is The Velveteen Rabbit by Margie Williams. If you haven't read it, or if you haven't read it in a long time, it bears rereading. In this story, the Velveteen Rabbit met another toy in the boy's nursery. An old, like, rocking horse, an old skin horse, it's called, in the corner, pushed away. The rabbit asked the skin horse, in this story, of course, toys talk. And I kind of like that. The rabbit asked the skin horse, "What is real? What is real? Does it mean having things that buzz inside you or a stick-out handle?" And the skin horse replied, "Real isn't how you're made. It's a thing that happens to you. When as a toy, you love a child for a long, long time, you become real." "Oh," said the rabbit, "does it hurt?" "Sometimes," the skin horse replied, for he was always truthful. "But when you're real, you don't mind being hurt." But does it happen all at once, like being wound up, the rabbit asked, or is it bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. And that's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or have sharp edges or have to be very carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. And this morning I've brought with me my Velveteen Rabbit. Would you like to see my Velveteen Rabbit? Okay. Here he is. I'd like you to meet Teddy Bear. Teddy, say hello to everybody. Hello. I've had Teddy Bear since I was 1 year old. And I've loved him longer than anything else in this world. He's been with me all those years. He's never failed me. I wouldn't take any amount of, you could not buy him from me. Now if you look closely at Teddy Bear, you'll see that I'll let him sit here and rest for a minute because he's old. His hair is worn off. His eyes have dropped off. Kind of shabby looking. His squeaker, he used to have a squeaker inside. I don't remember the squeaking noise, but I know it was a nice noise. But that's broken now. When I was 3 or 4 years old, after my brother had been born, I used Teddy as a weapon. I hit my brother with him. And we did that over and over. My mother told me to stop, but I didn't pay attention. She'd take Teddy Bear away from me for a while, but I got him back, hit my brother with him again, and Teddy's head came off. And I took it to my mother. I said, would you sew Teddy's head back on for me? And she said, no, I won't do that because you'll hit your brother with him again. So I took Teddy to the lady next door, and she sewed the head back on, and there it stayed ever since. And truth be known, I've hit my brother with him less after that. So Teddy, I'm going to put you down now for just a minute, if that's okay. Okay. You sit right here and listen. Okay. So my friends, try not to despair if you're going through a dark night of the soul. Try not to despair if you feel you have hit a bottom in life. If you feel an inner emptiness, or if you feel you have fallen into a hole and you can't seem to get out of it. Don't despair, even if your hair gets thin, or if you have trouble seeing, or if you get loose in the joints. For if we are to believe the skin horse, we can be assured that we are not becoming ugly, but are finally becoming lovable, complete, and real.